The official story was a handshake. The headlines, they called it a diplomatic breakthrough. You had Donald Trump claiming he'd secured a specific energy truce from Vladimir Putin. A gentleman's agreement, right? A 1-week pause on infrastructure attacks.
To spare civilians from the freezing cold.
Exactly. But the math. Well, the math is the violation of that truce within hours. The world you think you live in, where treaties hold water and a handshake stops a missile, it's already gone.
Precisely. And that disconnect, that gap between the diplomatic optics in some luxury hotel suite and the kinetic reality on the ground, that is exactly where we have to start. Because if you're operating on the assumption that the old rules of engagement still apply, you're calculating your safety based on a system that just doesn't exist anymore.
This is Neural Pulse. The intelligence report is dated February 5th, 2026. We're calling this the inflection point. And we aren't just looking at war maps today. We're looking at the simultaneous collapse of safety nets across the board, military, political, and financial. Let's analyze the data.
It's a convergence of crises. I mean, usually we see one of these sectors flare up while the other stays stable. Right now, the entire dashboard is it's lighting up red everywhere.
We have to start with the Eastern Front because the duplicity there is, well, it's just brazen. All the headlines for the last 48 hours have been dominated by the Abu Dhabi peace process.
Right.
This just happened February 4th and 5th, and you had the heavy hitters in the room. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, Russia's Kirill Dmitriev, and Ukraine's Rustem Umerov.
So this is high-level contact. These aren't low-level functionaries exchanging emails or some mid-level bureaucrats trying to make a name for themselves. These are the decision makers.
The actual decision makers sitting across a table. And on the surface, they delivered what looked like good news, a prisoner exchange. 157 soldiers from each side going home.
Which is the first real movement on that front in months.
Right. So if you were just reading the ticker at the bottom of a cable news screen, you'd think, oh, okay, a peace is breaking out. But, and this is where we have to look past the press release, you have to look at what happened immediately before and during these talks.
The kinetic reality.
Yeah.
While the diplomats were checking into their suites in Abu Dhabi, probably ordering room service and prepping their talking points, Russia launched the single largest aerial attack of the year. We aren't talking about some border skirmish here.
I mean, the numbers are they're staggering. February 3rd and 4th, Russia launched 450 attack drones, Shaheds, Gerberas, and 71 missiles. And they didn't just use their standard inventory.
No. They fired hypersonic Zircons and Iskanders.
And the Zircon usage is the key variable here, isn't it? We need to pause on that.
We do. That is a hypersonic cruise missile. It travels at Mach 9. It's incredibly expensive, notoriously hard to intercept. You don't use a Zircon to hit a trench line or, a truck depot.
No.
You use it to send a strategic message, a message that says, I can touch you and you can't stop me.
And the targeting just confirms that message. They didn't hit military barracks. They hit the heat. Kiev is currently sitting at minus 20 degrees Celsius.
Minus 20.
And the reports state that 1,170 high-rise buildings in the capital lost heat instantly. It's the weaponization of weather.
It's siege warfare in the modern age.
Yeah.
And this brings us right back to that energy truce you mentioned at the start.
Yeah.
Trump had publicly stated that Putin agreed to a 1-week pause. This attack happened smack in the middle of that supposed window.
So what's the takeaway here? Is Putin just chaotic? Is he, losing control of his generals? Or is this deliberate?
Oh, it's a brutal, calculated signal. Putin is demonstrating that the negotiation is a distraction. I mean, by freezing 1 million civilians during the peace talks, he's telling the West that the whole old system of diplomatic decorum is broken.
So if you can't enforce a truce for 48 hours...
you cannot enforce a peace treaty. He's showing that his word is meaningless, which, paradoxically, is a display of power. He's saying, I can lie to your face, and you still have to sit at the table with me because you have no other choice.
The cost of this war, though, it's becoming impossible to ignore. We have new estimates from CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They're putting Russian military deaths at 325,000.
And Ukraine, somewhere between 100,000 and 140,000 dead.
Those are just catastrophic numbers. We toss these figures around, but think about that. That is nearly 500,000 men gone.
A generation wiped off the map. It's a demographic hole that takes 50 years to fix. And because the U.S. is currently taking this transactional approach, trying to broker these deals that just get broken immediately, Europe is panicking. We're seeing reports of a UK and French coalition planning for escalation without the U.S.
Right. The report mentions an escalation ladder, phase 1 to phase 3. What does that actually look like in practice?
It's terrifyingly specific. They are planning for a scenario where, if Russia breaks a future ceasefire, which, as we've seen, is a near certainty, European troops might have to deploy to Ukraine.
Not just as advisors.
No, not just advisors, but for logistics or air defense. Phase 3 implies direct Western military intervention. They're essentially planning for World War III because they no longer trust the diplomatic track to hold Russia back.
So on one side of the world, we have this illusion of peace that's just masking an escalation of violence. But I want to pivot this deep dive to the Western Hemisphere, because if you thought the chaos was confined to Eastern Europe, you haven't looked at South America lately. This Operation Absolute Resolve on January 3rd, it reads like something out of a Tom Clancy novel.
It really does. U.S. Special Forces detained Nicolas Maduro. He is no longer in the Miraflores Palace. He is, right now, sitting in a federal detention center in Brooklyn.
And usually when you decapitate a regime like that, especially in a place as volatile as Venezuela, you expect an explosion.
Total chaos. Civil war, burning streets, loyalist uprisings, paramilitaries taking over neighborhoods. That is the standard playbook.
But here's the key data point. The expected chaos.
Right.
It didn't happen.
Not a whimper. The Venezuelan military just stood down.
And instead, we have Delcy Rodriguez as the interim president. And less than a month later, on January 29th, she signed the new hydrocarbons law.
This is the pivot. This is what we need to pay attention to. For decades, the ideology in Venezuela was strict socialism state control over everything, especially oil.
Right.
This new law, it effectively ends the state monopoly of PDVSA, the state oil company. It just opens the doors.
And the U.S. Treasury immediately responded with License 46.
Which allows U.S. oil majors, we're talking Chevron, Exxon, to go back in, drill, and export directly. It is a total economic restructuring disguised as a coup.
Or a coup disguised as a restructuring.
Either way.
Yeah.
But the message is clear. The ideology is gone. Survival is the new ideology.
What does this tell us about the region? Because for a while, we had what was called the pink tide, this whole wave of leftist governments sweeping across Latin America. It felt like a unified bloc.
Well, it confirms that the safety net for those ideologues is gone. The pink tide is broken. You can see it in the reaction of Venezuela's neighbors. I mean, look at Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro.
Right. I mean, this is a guy who historically was very critical of U.S. intervention. He used to call Donald Trump a madman and an enemy of the people. His entire political brand was built on opposing American hegemony.
And last week, he called his meeting with Trump terrific. He went from insulting the U.S. president to shaking his hand and making deals. Why?
Because he saw Maduro in a cell in Brooklyn.
Exactly. He realized that when the economic pressure is on, ideology doesn't pay the bills. And it certainly doesn't keep you in power. Ideology has been replaced by survival.
So we have the collapse of diplomatic norms in Europe, where treaties are basically smoke, and the collapse of ideological protection in South America, where socialism is being liquidated for cash. But now we need to make the turn. We need to shift from them, the nations, the armies, to you, the listener.
Yeah.
Because while this geopolitical chaos is happening, there is an economic regime change happening that is going to hit your bank account directly.
Right. This is the macro to micro shift. Most listeners are watching the war on their screens, but the fire is already under their front door.
And the catalyst here is a single name, Kevin Walsh. Donald Trump has nominated him for chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now, for people who don't follow central banking closely, this might sound like just another suit getting a job, but why is this a shock?
Because for the last 20 years, we have lived in an era of easy money. Low interest rates, quantitative easing, basically the central bank bailing out the market every time it sneezed. It's created a specific way of investing and living. Kevin Walsh is the antithesis of that. He is a hard money advocate.
Okay, let's break that down. What does a hard money Fed chair mean for the average person with a mortgage, a credit card, or a 401k?
It means he believes in real, positive interest rates. He hates inflation more than he hates a recession. He believes money should have a cost. So if you want to borrow, it's going to hurt. The era of free money is over. This is a paradigm shift that destroys asset bubbles. If you built your wealth relying on cheap debt, you are in serious trouble.
And we're already seeing the violence in the markets just from the announcement. I was looking at the charts for what are usually called safe havens, gold and silver.
Exactly. The conventional wisdom is, if the world goes crazy, buy gold. Well, the world is going crazy. We have war in Europe and coups in South America, and yet silver crashed 16.6% in a week. Gold is down 6.5%.
That seems completely counterintuitive. I mean, if we're on the brink of World War III, shouldn't gold be skyrocketing?
Not if interest rates are real. Think about it. Gold pays you nothing. It just sits there. If Kevin Walsh jacks up interest rates so that you can get a guaranteed high return on cash in a savings account or a bond, why would you hold a rock? High real rates crush precious metals because the opportunity cost of holding them just becomes too high.
And it's not just metals. Look at crypto. Bitcoin ETFs lost $1 billion in a single day after the Walsh announcement.
Because crypto is the ultimate easy money asset. It thrives on excess liquidity. When there's cash just sloshing around the system, people bet on digital coins. But Walsh is pulling the plug on the liquidity. You thought crypto was the exit from the system.
No.
When the system tightens, when the liquidity is drained by a hard money Fed, there is no exit. The Walsh shock is telling you that cash is king again, and speculative assets are in the kill zone.
It's affecting the wealth effect, too. I noticed LVMH Louis Vuitton took a massive hit. The stock's down 8%.
We call this the rich session. The Chinese market has collapsed because of their own real estate crisis. That was a huge chunk of luxury spending. And now the Western wealthy are closing their wallets because their portfolios are getting hammered by this new Fed policy.
So if the billionaires are stopping their spending and the central banks are turning off the money printer,
then your pension and your job are the next casualties. That soft landing everyone was talking about. That's a myth. We are looking at a hard reset. The safety net of the Fed will save the stock market is gone.
we've talked about the military threat, the political threat, the financial threat, but there is one more layer to this deep dive. And honestly, this one keeps me up at night. The report calls it the assassin's blade. It's the threat to the physical infrastructure that keeps you alive.
This is the uncomfortable truth about physical safety in 2026. We take the grid for granted. We assume the lights turn on. We assume the water pumps work.
The report highlights an incident in Poland from late 2025 that was kept relatively quiet until now. The Russian hacker group Sandworm hit the Polish power grid. But they didn't just flip the switch, did they?
No, and that's the crucial distinction. If they just hack the control software and turn the lights off, you can patch the software and turn them back on. That's the old way. Sandworm bricked the hardware.
Bricked.
They targeted the remote terminal units, the RTUs, and corrupted the firmware so badly that the devices were physically useless.
Like when a phone update goes wrong and the phone just never turns on again.
Exactly like that, but for a massive power station. You can't just reboot it. You have to send a truck, physically pull the unit out, and install a brand new one.
Physical destruction via code.
Precisely. Now imagine that happening here. Imagine the grid not just going down for a few hours, but being bricked for weeks. Why weeks? Because we don't have the spare part.
And where do those spare parts come from? That brings us to the supply chain hack.
Luxshare. A massive supplier for companies like Apple and Tesla. They were hacked by a group called Ransom House. Detailed schematics were leaked. This means the supply chain is transparent to our enemies. They know exactly how our hardware is built, and they know exactly how to break it.
And the country that controls most of that manufacturing hardware, China, is going through its own internal chaos right now.
This is the wild card. Xi Jinping is purging his own generals. Zhang Yuxia, Liu Zhenli, these are top-tier commanders. He's removing them out of pure paranoia. The PLA, the People's Liberation Army, is becoming leaderless.
A leaderless army sounds weak, but...
No, don't mistake chaos for weakness. A leaderless army controlled by a paranoid dictator is unpredictable. It makes them dangerous. If Xi feels his grip slipping, if the internal pressure gets too high, he might lash out just to unify the country.
And if he decides to pull the lever on the supply chain or unleash the cyber capabilities they've been building...
Then the Poland incident is just a preview. The era of outsourcing your survival is over. I mean, think about the pattern of this whole deep dive. You outsourced your energy security to global markets. Broken. You outsourced your safety to treaties. Broken. You outsourced your financial future to the Fed. They're changing the rules.
So, what does this all mean? We've laid out the evidence. The treaties are being violated in Ukraine. The pink tide is being liquidated in South America. The Fed is about to pop the asset bubbles with the Walsh shock. And the physical grid is vulnerable to being bricked.
The vacuum is here. The institutions you rely on, the banks, the government, the utility companies, they're failing to hold the line. The safety net we all grew up with is being dismantled in real time.
That's a heavy realization. It feels very isolating.
It is isolating.
Yeah.
But it's the only realization that matters.
Yeah.
The most dangerous thing you can do right now is wait for someone to fix it. No one is coming to save you.
So the question shifts.
Stop asking, what will the Fed do? Stop asking, what will the president do? Start asking, what will I do?
Are you a victim waiting for the lights to go out? Or are you taking command of your own situation?
Are you a victim waiting to happen? Or are you a warlord of your own life?
The silence from the establishment is deafening.
Interpret that silence accordingly.
This has been Neural Pulse. We bring clarity in a complex world.
Decide your move.